No, it's finally us.
It's worth the paper equipment to be in terms of we can be told what we can do with Ian.
Yeah, it's just finally us. Yeah, but they're all around there.
He was on his...
Look at the light, that's the reason.
That's what they said. I thought it was something to do with me.
You can have my germs too, sorry.
I don't want your germs.
I need to share.
No, we'll do. No, we'll do. No, I don't want germs. No, I don't. Trouble with what I have.
I bet. Have you had the flu, Jack?
Yes, I have.
Oh, that's the reason for it.
And I'm recovering anyway.
Oh, recovery.
From the
I
flu
went to the
jab.
wrong Chris.
Yes, so I understand. Lovely.
It's a spy drop, isn't it?
Yes. Should be a small package, really, but...
I like to get rid of what I can.
No, where George is doing.
Holiday. It's not been apologies.
Must have done.
No,
Got to charge it for 2 days.
Last week. I can't give you
What is it?
That's not a small club.
Can't do it. Can't go anywhere and get home with that.
Club, isn't it? That's it. Okay. Well, 10 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the Planning Policy Subcommittee.
So I say, James.
As we have quite a number of us here, we'll go through the emergency evacuation procedure. In the event of fire or other emergencies, please exit the building in an orderly manner to the assembly point, which is located in the car park parallel to the building. The fire exit in this room is indicated by the green fire sign exit. Please do not delay the evacuation by collecting any belongings. Do not use the lift. The premises must not be re-entered until the fire brigade have given the all clear. Please note it is against the law to smoke in these premises. Please note this meeting is being audio recorded. Thank you very much. Right, moving on. Apologies for absence.
There are none.
Thank you. Non-members attending.
Councillors Newport, Stanley and Ward.
Thank you. Item number 3 is the minutes of the Planning Policy Subcommittee held on the 22nd of June, which hopefully you've all seen previously. Can I ask, we did raise at various meetings prior to that a little section which referred to holding of regular meetings when we said monthly meetings, but most of that is history now. So apart from that amendment, which we have registered previously, are you approved the minutes of the 22nd of June? Okay. Right. Moving on to item number 5, the new local plan early engagement workshop. Sorry, declaration of interest. Sorry. Any declarations of interest? There's none. No. Moving on to item number 5, then the new local plan early engagement workshop and survey. Am I passing on to you, Natalie?
Yep. So as you will all be aware, we undertook the workshops sort of over the summer and more into the autumn as well, and that was supplemented by a survey. You would all have received the consultation statement that has been prepared, which has brought together all of those, the main issues that have been raised and our response to those. I don't really have a lot to say on it. Has anyone got any questions at all?
Well, I think that's the first point. We've all seen or had the opportunity to read the report, see the report. Is there any areas from members that they wish to enlighten or question or expand on? Is there any other points you want to raise, Natalie? In a more general term, we've seen the report. Is there things you've learnt from this opportunity? Things you would like to do differently? Should we go down this road again, or we will hopefully go down this road again?
I think it has been a useful experience for us following the adoption of the SCI back in July. Obviously, we've gone down to the parish level. We did find it challenging to engage with some of the parishes in terms of actually arranging meetings, which in some circumstances we haven't been able to give as much awareness of workshops as we would have liked. We also had some issues towards the back end of the programme of workshops in actually programming those workshops in before the end of the survey, which resulted in the survey being extended to enable people to put forward any additional comments they may have if they were unable to attend. So there were challenges, and we may consider whether it's right going down to that level, or whether we need broader workshops, just in sort of the main towns and villages, rather than trying to go to every single parish every time.
When you say broader, how do you mean broader?
For example, going to Rayleigh, Hockley, Rochford, and maybe then the main villages as well, and inviting people from outside the area to those villages, rather than trying to go to the sort of individual parishes.
Okay.
But we're open to
Well, we've got a couple of people that would like to speak here, so let's start off with John.
You should be happy with that?
Yeah.
No, it's okay. You go first. So
No, it's okay.
One, two,
Please go ahead, John.
to be honest, you know. I'm glad you said let's talk about learnings, because that's exactly what I jotted down. I do have and have had criticism of the way we did it, as you know, and I would have preferred that it completely complied with our statement of community involvement, but it didn't. But I note in the report by saying that it isn't a statutory consultation, so maybe that was the reason. But I am looking for future consultations to be completely to the letter of that. I agree.
Can I just stop you there? Could you possibly clarify where you don't think it met the statement of community involvement?
Yeah, well, I don't believe that the monitoring was appropriate, as you know, and I've put that in writing to you. When it talks about regular monitoring, I don't see monthly monitoring, you know, in a 6 to 8 week period as appropriate. I think monitoring needs to be earlier. Also, and I was going to go on to this later, but our statement of community involvement specifically added the issue of leafleting, which was something that this subcommittee wished to see, and it wasn't. And the situation is that in our informal meetings, or we've certainly together acknowledged that leafleting is something we'd want to see in the future. And I know you and I, Mr. Swearing, Councillor Swearing, spoke at the away day and sponsored the idea of a £20,000 budget each year, that there are consultations to achieve that. Having said that, as you probably know, I have regular meetings now with the ND, and he didn't seem to share and I'm going to say our support of leafleting, commenting that most councils now are trying to get rid of it. And he proffered the idea that, you know, engagement on consultations should be broadly, you know, electronic media based. We had a debate on that, and I think I managed, through talking about my experience of leafleting and elections and turnout and so forth, that leafleting did have value. So, you know, I stand by what we said. It is in our statement of community involvement, and I would expect it to be, you know, fully performed in that respect when we go to the issues and options consultations and those in future. I would also agree completely that I don't think I was in a position individually to influence this parish to parish method we'd used. It certainly was already underway before I was on the planning policy subcommittee, so I couldn't influence that. But I think, on reflection, and I would prefer, like you, okay, it's subsequent, but I would have preferred to see a district-wide consultation, because we are talking about a spatial strategy for a district, not a spatial strategy for individual parishes, which of course have their own opportunities through their parish plans, if that's how they intend to use them, or more particularly a neighbourhood plan, to actually execute such a view and contribute to the local plan. So I'm of the view that a district-wide consultation is appropriate, most appropriate for a district spatial strategy. And I think we have the opportunity to consider other options, like North Essex has suddenly come out with, which I didn't know was coming, garden communities, for instance. And that's something that, you know, we should have already talked about if we knew about it, and I'm sure we did. I didn't, but that's not the point. And I'd like to see that obviously come forward in our issues and options, because, you know, it is an option that should be explored with our residents. On a kind of a final note, I'm finding it difficult to agree to the recommendation because it talks about the content being agreed, and there are some responses to the content which I actually don't agree with. So I can't support the recommendation unless it moves towards noted, because I can't agree to it because I don't agree with everything that's been responded. I can't disagree with what residents have said, assuming it's accurate, but I'm not sure I agree with everything that's said in response. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I think, taking up some of your points, John, I think I've harped on about this before. I think it was unfortunate that Christine Lyons, with her experience, was, shall we say, instrumental in organising what Natalie and Zav and Dan had to pick up in the longer run. And as I say, from their point of view, they didn't have a benchmark to work to start with, whereas Christine Lyons did know what she had done in the past and what was going to happen and what wasn't going to happen. I think the point you've made is that it was a non-statutory requirement, so yes, it was a learning curve for us all. From my observations on the few that I went to, well, 3 or 4, 5, 6 I went to, I do question how we're going to get anybody to engage with us. If I can't get local town and parish councillors to come and show any interest in it, and they did all know about it, and they did know the implications of what we were trying to do, I do question how we can get the vast majority of residents to support the issue. But that, as you're aware, John, we have asked the council for a budget to meet what we think is the way ahead, and we'll have to wait and see if they've got the money in the budget to do it. But it will be a large sum of money for a number of years on an almost annual basis. Over to you, James.
Yeah, question for you, Natalie. How do you account for the poor level of attendance? I'm referring to the Bailey particularly.
Yeah.
And also the techniques that you've used for surveying, mail shotting, were they advanced techniques, or were they just, it appeared to me as the survey was very basic, it was just an open-ended form. I think a lot of residents were put off by that, and I know now that a lot of the surveys are coming out are a bit more structured.
Yeah.
And also, how are we tracking responses to surveying? Because, you know, there's a lot of techniques now where we can see if someone's opened the email, if they've, you know, clicked on the link. You know, was that kind of technique used when we were using mail shotting, you know, particularly electronic mail shotting to people?
Okay, I'll take your first point about the attendance at the workshops. So in the report we have clearly set out how many people we've got on our mailing list who we directly notified of the workshops. As you can see in a number, particularly Holbridge and I think Rayleigh, there's quite a few residents that are on our mailing list who were directly notified of that. I mean, I can't say why they couldn't attend or didn't want to attend. I mean, particularly the evening workshop, there was a blood donation session going on that we didn't know about, so that may have had an influence in terms of people actually being able to get access to the venue that we were at. There were also other issues with some of the workshops, and like I said, we had trouble engaging with some parishes, so we couldn't give as much notification of the workshops as we would have liked. So there are some factors which could have influenced attendance. Also, it could be a case of people weren't generally interested in what the workshops were about because we didn't have anything for them to look at. We weren't actually consulting on a specific proposal, so that may have also influenced the workshops attendance. That's just my opinion, observation.
I think I'll come back to the point though, James. If we cannot get our own town and parish councillors to come along to an event, and they were all fully aware of it, and say in Rayleigh, not all the town councillors came along to the event.
I did.
You did?
No,
But not all of
We
them did.
but out of that number, there was more councillors than there was public.
There was
Yeah.
eight councillors and 5 public.
Yeah.
But
And how many councillors we got in Rayleigh Town Council?
Dave,
Don't go there.
we've had a response from Sean Spurn to Rayleigh Town Council, or something along the lines of, "Oh, Town Council's not interested in the local plan." Was that right, Chris?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but
can I
we've
just come
actually-
back on that point? That was, I believe, as a result of email from the clerk saying that we offered the town council to be a bit more involved in the process, and unfortunately, the town council had a meeting and they decided that they didn't want to be fully on board with the workshop
That's not what.
idea.
Well, that's not for us to argue about. That's for you to
Yeah.
take up with the Rayleigh
That's
Town.
the
Yeah.
information that
Council.
we were given by the clerk, but it had been discussed at the town council. Unfortunately, they didn't want to be fully involved in what
I
we
will
were.
check with the clerk. on
Yeah,
that.
that's an issue,
Yeah.
an internal issue. We
Yeah.
can, the district can only respond to what's been sent to them. Chris, do you
Oh,
want?
sorry, Chairman. There's a second point.
Sorry, yes.
That's the new court. The surveys. I take your point that it was very brief, but again, we didn't have anything specific for people to actually comment on. Whereas in later stages, when we've actually got a document, they do tend to be more structured. As this was an informal, non-statutory consultation, and it was off the back of the workshops where it had a lot of different ideas and opinions coming through on that. We structured the survey so that it was open as possible, so people could put down what their thoughts were. We gave guidance on what had come out of the workshops already, so it was a case of if people wanted to have a look at the workshop notes, they could. And if they had anything else to add, then they could do that if they chose to. And as you'll see from the consultation statement, we had a number of people that did decide to add additional comments or repeat comments, strengthen what had already been put forward to us. But some people just used it as a means to be put on our mailing list. And they didn't have anything specific to add at that time, but they were letting us know that they wanted to be involved in future stages.
And what about my last point about how we use the
tracking
mailing list,
responses.
tracking? Yeah.
We don't do anything specific at the moment. I'm assuming we would have the facility
I
to do
believe with the new IT that's coming in,
it. Yeah.
I'm right in our council award, that the new IT that's coming in,
Yeah.
if people tap on, it is registered straight away. Whether they respond or not, but they have opened it, and
Yes.
that I understand is the new IT system that is coming in, and that will be part of the package when it comes in.
If I can just come in just on this, just that brief point, one of the things that I specifically asked is that with the new IT actually coming into being, which shouldn't be that long, one hopes, as soon as the whole concept is if there's a survey up there and there's that information on that survey, the moment they touch that link, that is registered. So it's registered as them having shown interest. Now, you know, we're having to counter apathy and look at apathy through electorate as well, which is a big problem. But I think the most important thing is where we have tried to get it out there and people have actually tapped on that link so they can actually see it, at least we know that it's been viewed, it's been looked at. There may be no response. They may look at it and decide not to respond to it in any way, shape or form. They may not reply, but at least we know that they've seen it, and we've got a count of those people who have had a visual look to know it's existing. And then we have to take it forward from there to see where we go.
Matt, I believe you want to.
Yeah, it was just to come back on the point, and just for my benefit, as I haven't sort of experienced some of the issues that Councillor Mason has raised with the SCI. I just wanted to explore a bit more about what you meant about monitoring with the SCI.
The SEI, if you looked at a particular paragraph in there that we all crafted, was specifically, I mean, I can't quote it verbatim, so I don't have it in front of me, but the basis of it, the intention of it, and the actual words of it are, there shall be regular monitoring during the course of any consultation. Now, to me, we can sit here and we can argue like lawyers about what regular means. Regular is the word that's in the dictionary, English dictionary, not a legal dictionary, although I think a legal dictionary would probably say the same. So regular to me means that it's got to be an appropriate periodicity during the whole period of the consultation. To me, that means if it's an 8-week consultation, I can't see any reason why it can't be done weekly. If somebody wants to argue with me it should be done fortnightly, we could talk about it. But any longer than that, it doesn't give you the intention of the addition and the clarification and the statement made in the SCI is to ensure that during a consultation, if it's not going so well, we can find out what engagements aren't going so well, to investigate why we may not be capturing that data or investigating why it's not happening, considering whether or not there are other channels of engagement that we need to adopt. On the other hand, if it's showing that we're doing extremely well, then we get an assurance and a comfort that we've actually organised it properly. That, I hope, June, as you were one of the few people that were here when that was agreed, would you agree with, I'm sorry Chair, I'm saying, would you agree that that's what we, and we also emphasised the need to reach hard to reach groups.
I think the problem I would raise.
If I could just answer
Yeah,
that,
sure.
When you were saying earlier, Alison looking that way, I was included in that because that was my biggest concern, that we weren't, and this, as everyone will know, this online assumption that everyone these days will respond to you in that way. Clearly, by the numbers that have responded, it doesn't work like that anyway. But we're not actually getting the information to the people that may respond to us and do need to know what is happening. And out of that 20,000, yes, it's a large sum of money, but if it does the trick and we get even 5 more people respond, it's quite a percentage on the respondents we get.
I think this is the question I would ask, and I'm sure somebody else will ask. What level do you consider is a successful response?
Well, that's not for this meeting, is it?
It is if John says we're monitoring it on a fortnightly basis, for argument's sake. What level do we regard? 5%, 10%, 20%?
Well, can I come in, John?
Yeah.
Because you've
James, can we just?
You've actually addressed me, so I feel bound to respond.
Yeah.
Well, of course. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time professionally, being involved in customer service satisfaction surveys, consultations, etc. And I could trot off some figures of attainment that were considered to be appropriate to say that was a statistically relevant response to a customer service satisfaction in the financial services industry. However, I don't think I should do that because I think it's incumbent on us as a council to find out, and then it's probably through desktop research, just what the norms are today for the sort of channels we're using. And I don't think it's impossible to do that. I think if I sat down with Google and the various channels, I would probably just put in a single search and come up with probably 4 or 5 very relevant pages, all with research data, particularly from the political the political spectrum and the commercial spectrum, to indicate what we should be seeing.
Matt, I'll throw that one to you because I think it's going to come into your sphere.
I mean, interestingly, looking at the consultation statement, we had a total of, just to look at paragraph 2.3, we had a total of 7,013 direct form notifications sent out publicising the workshop. And we had a total of 293 residents and businesses attend, which I think shows the difficulty and the challenge that we have, which is 4% attending, which is although we had businesses and residents attend, it's a low figure, and I don't think that is systematic just of Rochford from my experience. That's unless it's a very direct issue for people, and obviously at later stages when you have issues and options or proposals, there's something of substance that people sort of look at, so you do tend to get more responses. The Southend area action, Southend Rochford Airport Area Action Plan, that had stages where it did get a lot of responses because it was an issue, and the timings and the stage of production of the document meant that more people wanted to get involved because the issue was very real to them at that time, I guess. Having early engagement process, at the moment it's very open-ended, and you'd want it to be open-ended because you don't want to direct people too much. You want to say, okay, this is what's out there, give us your views, all views, because you don't want to feel like you're directing people to certain issues. So it is more open-ended at this stage of the process, and it will become more focused. And in relation to surveys and questionnaires, they can become more focused as you move down the process. In relation to the monitoring process, yes, I guess if you have a 6-8 week consultation process as part of an issues and options, preferred options submission version of a planning document, you have opportunity to engage people in specific ways which the SCI will outline. How you monitor that during that process. If there are workshops, then it's having that timing and ability to change those matters as you move through that process. From my experience, you do tend for planning consultations to get all the consultations in at the last moment. You have nothing for the 8 weeks as far as representations coming in, and then you have, if not all, your representations coming in on the last few days. So during that monitoring process, it's very difficult to say, we're not getting those representations in, and we need to do something as far as that's concerned, because most of your representations do tend to come in on the day of the close of the consultation. It's just the way it seems to work. But I agree that during the consultation process, if we do not seem to be getting the levels of attendance for workshops or other meetings that we're organising, then there is some merit in reviewing that throughout the process to see what's possible. But equally, from my experience, it is very difficult to get people to engage in planning consultations and the planning process as such, unless it is an emotive issue or you are at a stage where you have specific proposals out there.
Do you want to come back, John? Then I'll move on to some of the others.
Yeah, I do. I don't wish to. This is not an argument.
No.
It's not a court of law with point and counterpoint. I understand what you're saying. We just have to be a learning organisation and learn as much as we can as quickly as possible to get the best sort of results for our understanding of what residents see as what they like to see or not like to see, to inform the process. In terms of engagement, I think there's one particular issue that I don't know how to solve, and it's the same with every consultation we do, because we produce a technical document, because we have to produce a technical document because those are the terms of the statutory engagement. However, those things are terribly difficult to engage with, unless you happen to be a very interesting and dedicated person. And I've always said to any officer contemplating a consultation, I'd say, yes, of course you've got to, it's like with the air quality one, you know, and it's the same with the planning one, so you know, there are parallels, is to say, fine, you know, produce your statutory compliant document. Produce it in the form and the language it has and the structure it has to be. And then I say, but if you could put something on top of that that honestly was an honest representation of, you know, a bit like the old executive summary, précis, whatever, that is where you're going to find the level of engagement. Now, if you do something like that and pull out the points that are particularly are likely to be of interest to residents, you can then redirect them with a hyperlink if they happen to be online, or not, as the case may be, to the particular part of the document they want to read. So,
yeah, I mean, I can see where you're coming from, John, and I can, but I think, having said that, who's going? You know, we could be criticised subsequently for not bringing out the most pertinent points, because that point that we haven't brought out is important to somebody, and we've missed it. Come on, Matt, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good idea to do something like that. We used to do that kind of approach at Southend. I mean, obviously, as you stressed, it's a statutory document and statutory consultation process. They have to comment on the statutory document, so they cannot be commenting on a summary of that doesn't detail the points in the way that it must be made in a planning document. But there is some merit in having an executive summary of the document, so at least people can get the flavour and themes, and if it can direct them to the main document, then there's very much use.
I mean, if this is something perhaps we could look at as a committee, or perhaps get full council's approval, that if we want to produce this, then it would have to be the précis or a bridge version, or whatever you want to call it, be approved in principle by full council, or I don't know what level it would have to be approved by. That's something we can sort out in the process if we feel that's the way we want to go. But what I'm conscious of is we could be opening a debate that goes on all evening about who wants what put into what. But what we could, there's no, as far as I can see, if we feel that this is something that we may all benefit from, it may be advantageous, well then we can investigate it.
We just made sure that we obviously caveated it heavily to say that, you know, this is just for guidance only and shouldn't be used for making representations.
Okay, can we make a? Is it pertinent to that, Ian? And I think then I'll go back to Chris.
Yeah, it is pertinent actually. When we were bringing out some of the research we were doing, and where I was asking that the information that was going out, where we had hyperlinks put in there this time, which would actually go to the full document, so that you could actually understand, if you wanted to read it, you can go to understand the backup explanation as to how we're arriving at these things. This is one of the things that I asked the lads to do. I think Dan went through and did quite a lot of this on the last document that came out, that he put hyperlinks with regard to headings and things, so it gave a bit of breadth and depth. You know, rather than putting everything in there, you could actually see the full explanation if you wanted to. But again, I fully agree with the idea of having something which is an easy, brief read. Then you've got the links that go in there that can give you the depth of what this is about.
Will we leave that for you to investigate and make some proposals for?
Exactly, and if it's online, then it can have hyperlinks to the document. Otherwise, it can have references to where you find those main headings in the document, and it makes sense, and it helps guide people through as a map to the document, because they are technical. So,
Chris, you wanted to speak or raise some questions.
With what we just said, this is on the assumption that everybody's online. This is the assumption that everybody's online, what we're talking, and as we're talking at the moment. So we've really got to expand that into
I think you could probably do
literature.
If we can get the funding to do a leaflet drop.
Yeah, obviously.
Then you could highlight these points and put a point of contact to where people can find this if it meant
I agree.
whatever.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Right. Anyway, getting back to the workshops. Obviously, where the implications are most prevalent, the workshop, and that is Royth Parish, was greater than Rayleigh, on the basis that, and there was more people at the parish workshop than there was at Rayleigh, as there was only 5 at Rayleigh. And on
no,
that,
there wasn't. There was an
There was.
afternoon session as well.
there was a great deal more at the parish than
But
what there was at
there is
Rayleigh.
no assumption that Rorath is going to be in
No,
line
d-
in line for more housing.
Can I?
Yeah, but I'm saying, Chris, there were 2 sessions in Rayleigh, and the afternoon session was substantially better supported than the evening one. I don't know why, but it was. And
Oh,
Hullbridge and other places were very well supported at other times. So I don't think there is an assumption of why Rorath should feel that they're going to be the firing line. That's not been decided yet. But I go with your comment that it was very well, there was interest, substantial interest.
Right, okay. So, as I was saying, I thought it was well supported at Rorath on the basis of what is happening to West Rayleigh. And I realised that the officers only went with the census of 2010 information, which I was a bit disappointed for the fact that the schools are well and truly up to their max within 1 or 2 pupils. And I was a bit, I think everyone that attended these workshops were disappointed in the fact that we did not give out the correct amount of availability and localised issues on that report.
Do you have access to more current stuff now?
The census is the 2011 census, which obviously is the last census that came out. I
Yeah.
can't comment because I wasn't at the
Yeah.
workshops.
Yeah, well,
but
in terms of the education, it was the 5-year plan which we were basing it on, which obviously is provided by
Well, I
the
did
county council.
realise
Yes,
that. Yes,
yeah.
I did realise that when I spoke to
Yeah.
you in any case.
Yeah, they are now. I think they're now releasing 10-year plans, so they should be taking into account, for example, in development North London Road and the impact that would have on school capacity, and as well as
Well,
the
before
Hull, for example.
before we discuss the impact on development of North London Road or West Rayleigh, whatever you like to say, that we didn't have a precise amount of how many pupils, what places there were, and the volume of whatever it be in the way of transport, traffic, goodness knows what else. So that would have been, I do believe that would have been better, because that obviously raised a few eyebrows at the beginning of the session, and in which it did, because it was felt that the council didn't have any idea what was going on at this present time, which I think that is a justified criticism.
Hang on a second. Do we have access to any more up-to-date information that we could put into the public domain?
in relation to school places.
School places, what Chris has just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, first as a general comment on evidence base. Obviously, evidence base is developed during preparation of a local plan or any other planning document. So you have certain evidence that accumulates over the time. This is pre-issues and options stage. This was early engagement on open issues. So as we go through the process, I'm sure there's more information that Essex County Council will be able to give us in relation to looking at capacities of schools, which will then feed into that issues and options report.
Okay.
All what I was trying to make an emphasis of is that if we need the public to get involvement, we need to give them an up-to-date and precise account of what is in the community before we do anything else, and that will then obviously give them a better view. And as my way of looking for involvement with the community is that how many councillors does the council hold? Is there how many councillors?
Which council?
This council?
39.
Right. And have we had any information from those 39 councillors from their parishes or wards as to the have they publicised it enough? Have they gone round and asked the community to get involved with these projects?
I don't.
I did.
I don't.
I did. I went to my parish meeting, and I said to them, we've got a workshop going, and try and get the leaflets out, which we did. We printed another 400 leaflets, and we put those out, and that's the response we got. We got a better response than what we would do if it was just a parish meeting, unless we're giving away chocolates or something like that. But I did actually print on my own printer leaflets to get out there to the community.
Well,
I just wonder if that is something we could look at with the councillors and give them the leaflets and say, deliver these leaflets and see what the response is with these leaflets.
I think we've already covered this aspect, Chris, because
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
asked
yeah.
if funding can be
I know.
made available
Yeah.
to go to all the residents within the district. We've already asked for this to go
I know.
into full council, so
But
hopefully that will nullify your concern. Did you want to come back on
I was
that?
only just going to reference what it says in the statement, just that the workshops were publicised on a parish by parish basis using the following methods of notification, and it says via ward councillors and parish town councillors, so as a method, so that's detailed.
Can I just turn around and say, all we got was 200 leaflets for the ward,
Sorry,
Yeah.
for the parish.
can I just,
Yeah.
we also, did we not go out through all of the parishes in terms of what they did in terms of newsletters, whether it be
Newsletters,
quarterly,
yeah.
monthly, whatever?
It all went out because I remember Councillor Hoy mentioned Riverside or whatever his local magazine was.
Yeah.
River, whatever, yeah.
We haven't got a magazine.
No, but
But generally,
But generally it was, yes,
Yes.
I know. But
We
then
did-
we
sorry.
added the leaflets that were given to us. We added another 200, and we
Yeah.
managed to get 400 out between three of us,
Right.
which was quite good, really.
But then
There we
we've
go.
learned from this, and I think as I say, we've said that if the council feels this is the way wants to go for subsequent meeting, then there is a cost involved,
Oh yeah.
and that's what they've got to decide whether they want to do or not. And if not, then we have to go back to Plan B, which is perhaps a lesser system than some of us perhaps feel that may be appropriate. Chris, sorry, you asked some time ago.
Yes, thank you.
I'm not-
Okay. In essence, this round of consultations was a fairly vague, open-ended one. Basically, tell us what you think the issues are, what the problems are. And it's not surprising that the responses at some of the parishes were very low in terms of the number of people attending. People in Raleigh might think, well, if the council doesn't already know we've got traffic problems, then what? If they haven't learned that already, why should they go along? I can understand. In some places, the attendance was quite dismal. However, as Chris has pointed out, the attendance at Rawworth was quite high, bearing in mind the population there. If we had 900 people at the Raleigh meeting, we would have regarded that as quite a success. Well, that's 3% of the population of Raleigh. 3% of the population of Rawworth did go. So we managed it in Rawworth. The response back has been, I think it's over 200 responses, which is probably quite enough to be going with now. If we had 10 times the people responding and 10 times the comments, and we had 2,000 comments, I think the officers would be struggling. Going back to the comments, there are 200 of them, and I've lost, here we are. I just wonder if they're listed, and you probably can't answer me now on this, but taking two at random, number 51, about speed reductions, comments can be passed on to Essex Highways. Has it been passed on? And number 60, which was about King Edmund school capacity, comment noted and will be queried. Has it been queried? So I think if we want the public to take these consultations seriously, we have to follow things up, even though I know there's a lot of work involved. The future consultations are going to be meatier. We go to the issues and options document. I think it's referred to later on as being a light touch document, but even so, we're getting closer to the more serious business end of the whole system. And people will be more interested, and they will go along if they think there's something worth going along for. When we did the last plan, Rochford District Matters, if I remember correctly, it mentioned the plan, but in very vague terms, didn't actually tell you in the document District Matters what the plan entailed for your area. They didn't give a clue. They said, you can look at it if you want to. And people just ignored it. So if we're putting anything out in writing, it needs to be more specific to the area. And I take John's point about it being a district-wide spatial document. People naturally are going to be more interested in their area. And if you want them to respond, you would have talked to them about their area. That's really it, Jim. Oh, just one last thing. You said, sir, about people respond towards the end of consultations. Is that what happened with this consultation?
I'll have to pass over. Please.
Yeah, we did get quite a high volume towards the close of the consultation.
So we can regard this as a learning experience. So if we're doing, if we're looking at the next consultation and the level's not very high, we can look at the graph from last time and see where we're an indication of where we are. That will help.
Yeah, and I think you need to sort of take into account the fact that in the next stage people are actually going to have something to physically to read. So it's going to take time for them to read that and then to formulate their responses and submit them to us. So yeah, as Matthew pointed out earlier, there is generally a time lag. But I mean, in terms of monitoring what happens at any events that we do, for example, then we can certainly do that. But the intention, I think, next time around is to have something firmly in place before we start consultation, so people know exactly when any events are going to be, and what's taking place when.
Thank you. I mean, I would still like to see a complete round of parish meetings. Royal certainly has shown it would welcome one in terms of numbers. If Rayleigh, I think we should have one in Rayleigh as well. In fact, in every parish. I think we should stick with that for next time round.
Can I ask a question here? Chris has raised a couple of points there. Is there any mileage, or will this subsequently come out in more recent correspondence that we get from various bodies, the points that, like Chris has just raised, is there any mileage in picking these out and sending a round robin to these various bodies and saying, comments please?
I suppose if you want to go after, or you can go first if you
Can I
want.
just say something first?
Yeah, go.
There's already been a statement made by county about the number of in the plan for schools about is it 300 for secondary and 900 whatever, and the two schools in the two developments, one in Rochford and one in Rayleigh, that are meant to be provided as part of development, answering the primary concerns, albeit they won't necessarily be in the right places where people live and need access to local schools. But the issue around secondary schools is a big one, and it is a huge one for West Rayleigh, with all of the children locally to that. But that information is already out there from county, isn't it? So you know, there has been the statements around how they're going to address those numbers, but how that's actually going to happen in detail within the schools that we know have no space and capacity to enlarge, as in secondary schools on their current premises, is an interesting one.
Yeah,
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sorry, firstly on the point of passing on issues, we have started to do this already. So for example, at the Rayleigh meeting, one of the residents had the proposal for construction traffic. We've passed that on already. So we are working our way still through the issues. Our primary focus was to have something to bring to this meeting to show you what the outcome was. But we are still working on the quick wins, if you like, where we can try and make a difference in the short term where we can. And on your point, Councillor Lammy, about education, we have had a couple of meetings with Essex County Council, and this was particularly after the Great Rakering workshop, where there was a big concern about secondary school education, etc. And we said, well, we need to know exactly what the current position is. It needs to at least go to the end of our current plan period. We need to know what the position is, and we need something that clearly sets out how we're going to work together to determine what our future need is as well. So we should have some sort of a statement, if you like, which should be ready to go out with the issues and options early next year.
Yeah, did you want to come in?
Yes, just a very quick observation as to where we were looking at if I can just get this absolutely right, where the early engagement consultation statement. If you wanted to look on page 8, I thought there's a very interesting and telling item in there where Hockley and Holbridge, but if we're looking at Hockley, which I know can be a very potent area at times, they had known nearly 1,500 people were notified of that meeting. 1,500 people, but only 40 turned up. Now, that's less than 3% of those people notified. Now, we've got an area there of people who are interested, and then even more telling is Holbridge, where you had nearly 1,000 people who were notified, directly notified by both letter and email, and yet only 47 turned up. And I would have thought Holbridge would have been even bigger attendance than it actually showed. So there is an enormous amount of apathy out there, it seems.
I'm going to have to comment on this, Chair, if I may.
Okay, let's go systematically.
Yeah, let's do that.
We start off with John and then we work our way down. But I think we've already highlighted this point, and we've already made our point as to what we hope would happen in future for consultations, and a bigger, more robust notification system to all residents. I agree, we can't drag people to these meetings. I would hope, because as my colleagues here have said, there is a more structured statement coming out in future. This is what you can actually look at rather than open-ended scenario, that there will be more interest. But I take your point, Ian, that you can't drag people there, and yes, they were notified, but perhaps when there is something more concrete on the table, you might get a more positive response. John?
Well, if we're going to start quoting figures, if you look at page 9 and you look at Hawkwell, 291 invitations were solicited, and the response was over 10%. Now, I'm going to take a bit of credit for that, like Chris did, because obviously I sought to publicise it and people do listen. I'm going to refute, Ian, I'm sorry to say, your view that there's apathy on planning issues. I don't think that's the right word, and I certainly wouldn't agree or subscribe to that. I've spoken before. It's about how we engage with people and the way we interest them in the subject to stimulate their interest in responding, which is important. I know Chris spoke about what he did. I mean, I've got an email list, and it's quite considerable. It's been built up over a long period of time of representation, and I use that Facebook page and my own, or our own website, if you like. And I know, looking around the room, there was a lot of people there that I knew. I knew them personally, and I knew that they would have received some sort of invitation from myself. Sometimes, it's about responding to the individual and trusting the individual. And I said it was important, and I think they turned out. So I don't think it's apathy. I think it's about how you engage.
Well, I think we can spend all day arguing about interpretation of wording. Gentlemen, if you've got something different to go on that long, we'll gladly go with it.
Angry, not apathetic.
Yeah, I think we've just about flogged this one to death at the moment. We know what.
Dave, the only comment I was going to make was maybe we should look at the message that we're actually putting out and the copy that's used, and the comms team should be split testing how we put out the message to areas as well. Maybe one area doesn't read it as the same message as another area.
That's something we can put with comms to discuss.
This happens with different age groups. For example, the way that you approach a younger age.
I don't know if we are geared up, and this is something perhaps maybe you can have a chat with comms about, whether we are geared up as a council to deal break things down that specifically. I don't know. I
It's
can't.
not
I
difficult,
can't.
Dave.
It may not be difficed, but they're
It's
not
something
here
we
to
can-
to,
yeah. It's
to,
something
to
we can
discuss.
explore with them, isn't it?
Yeah,
So-
it's something we can certainly talk about. June, is there anything you wanted to come in on
I
anywhere?
only wanted to comment on what you said originally about not getting councillors, particularly Rayleigh Town Council, to attend, because it wasn't a consultation or workshop for councillors, it was for the public. And one or two comments that I've had from in my ward have been from one or two people that did attend. I'm not sure if it was both at the same workshop, I don't think it was that it was all councillors, and those that were there were busy talking to the one or two members of the public that did, specifically to one or two members of the public that didn't turn up, and not engaging with everyone that was there. Now you could turn that around and say, well, that's up to them, they should have made sure that they had engagement, but members of the public are sometimes a bit reticent to push themselves forward when there are too many councillors present. And
Yeah.
it's seen as dominating the situation, and I think that is something where we're all used to talking in public, being in a public forum. Some people aren't, and they're a bit afraid to come forward.
I don't know, June. I mean, some of the ones that I went to, I mean, we specifically, I can recall at Hockley, specifically went round and spoke to people, sat down
and
with
you had
them.
the people there to sit down and
It
talk
also,
to. I'm
yeah.
just feeding back what
Yeah, but,
I've had. But the other, there was something else. Oh yes, in relation to the attendance in Rayleigh, and I think Chris is right. Most people in Rayleigh don't see the developments in West Rayleigh as being a Rayleigh problem. I do, because I'm a councillor in that area, and most of Rayleigh don't. They
No,
say, well, it's not going to affect us. Yeah, we've got
It's-
issues
it's
with the
right.
town centre, the pollution, that the traffic is going to be a problem, but it's not in our area. It's Warwick. It's
Because
over there.
basically Rayleigh is built up. There's not many places left.
Mm.
As you're quite right, June.
It
The majority, with the majority of the rest of Rayleigh, there isn't room to develop any further.
No.
It's already got applications in. It's already being developed. There is no area to.
Their concern will come when the traffic plans are
Yeah.
in place and either adequate, inadequate, or whatever.
Whatever.
School issues, school places, surgeries, doctors, the NHS provision, all of that will become an issue for everyone.
Yeah.
But it isn't for the whole of Rayleigh at the moment. And I think that answers part of the low attendance in Rayleigh. But the other issues were about that second workshop was really, really last minute. And many of us weren't able to even think about attending that.
Tina.
We found the one in Lake Room was very low turnout. Due to the time, at 9:30 in the morning, wasn't particularly a very good time for people. We found that it probably wound people up more where they wanted an evening session where there couldn't be an evening session. So what the residents were tending to turn around and say was, it was done so people couldn't come along to find out what is actually going on at the Rochford District Council.
I'll be honest.
It should have been more of an evening rather than a daytime one. And Ian, they pointed out, was a very good salesman. If you want new paths, you want new roads, have more houses built. That was the comment that we kept coming back.
I mean,
Sorry, Ian.
but I think I think this is one of the things that you will never win. I mean, the best supported events were during the day. Doesn't matter how you try and dolly it up. And I think, again, it's something we've learned from, and we will bear this in mind when we go down the road. We'll have to take this in. It is a learning curve. Before we progress anything further, hopefully we'll have another meeting before we start going down the road again, and we can, Matt and Co can come up with some plans or some ideas. But I can appreciate that they have problems getting responses from some parishes.
Yes.
And in the end, it was a Hobson's choice. You either have it now,
That's it, yeah.
or you don't
And
get
that's
one.
what residents didn't like. They don't understand why they couldn't have the choice. Why couldn't they have an evening
But we
one
couldn't get
rather
contact
than
with the
day?
parishes. We couldn't get an answer from.
You could get contact with Sharon because Sharon was in contact with.
Well, not
most
all of
us
the
all
parishes
day.
you couldn't. We did have some fun and games.
Right, okay then.
Not all of them, but some
Yes.
of them. Matt, do you want to come?
Yeah,
come in?
no, I was just saying, evening, day meetings, done lots of different ones, and it can just vary massively. You can never predict what's going to happen. During the Joint Area Action Plan, to quote that again, a an issue that was interesting lots and lots of people. I did a number of evening meetings where, you know, it varied from 50 people turning up to 2 people over the whole night, you know, and that's just at various different places throughout Southend at the time, because I was doing it on that half of it. So, and they were evening meetings, and it was well publicised. You know, there were posters, papers, news droppings, everything we thought we could possibly do, we had done, but you couldn't predict. I was sitting there on my own for 2 hours, you know, sort of just waiting for people to come in, but they didn't come. So it can be very unpredictable, I guess. You know,
I think the problem is, because we've got so many new developments going on in Wakering, people don't like the idea of having a morning one where they can't put their point of view across when they're working. They wanted to be there in the evening.
I guess, you know, that's the debate of daytime, evening meetings. Some people can't make evenings, so they like to sort of come in the daytime. You know, they prefer to come out in the daytime. So it's very difficult to predict for different areas, and satisfying everyone is very difficult. You know,
Right. You
as far
would
as
have
planning's
definitely been
concerned.
better
So-
off if an evening one would have been planned rather than the daytime one.
Okay, last one, Chris. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to point out that when Ian was talking about apathy, it has been in the past that, oh well, the council do what the council do, and our views are not respected as residents and not taken into account. Now we are trying to, or this side of the fence, if you like, whichever you like to call it, or the whole of us are trying to change that around, in as much as we want you to get involved, and this is what Ian was saying about getting involved and getting the views of the residents. Now we must make sure that we are putting in to our policies, to our planning, what those views are. We must absolutely make sure, because in the past it's been, well, they do what they want to do, they don't take no notice of us. And to prove the point is that instead of, and I asked Mr Scrutton and Mike Stranks on the same question, is that we need to go out there to find out the truth of what is being spoken to us. Whether it's coming from an authority or not an authority, there are other avenues to take views from, and we are not taking those views. And one that I'm particularly concerned about is the small, if you like, flood forum, which government have turned around and said that we should take the views of them as well as everybody else, which we are not doing. So my point is that we need to make sure that the residents' views are paramount in
Chris,
whatever we're doing.
I think you've got to make the point of differential here. There are certain bits of legislation that, irrespective of what the public view is, the government's view or the planning authorities may be in conflict with that. Now, we can register, and I think it quite rightly says in here, when we do our options, that where possible, residents' views will be incorporated right early on in the planning application.
That's all.
I mean, that's what we will try to do. That's why we're having this.
Yes.
But there will be areas, I can tell you now, where you and me may think we should do something, and planning authorities will say no. And there will be areas like that. We all know that. But it is quite clearly stated in there that we will, where possible, take residents' views into consideration in future planning. Go on, Matt.
I mean, that's, you know, planning is that difficult balance,
Yeah.
isn't it? You know, it's that balance between the environmental, social, economic. You know, it's a difficult one, and it's finding that right balance, because lots of people have lots of different views, and it's how you bring that together in a plan. I suppose you know, residents' views are taken into account, and that's the terminology that the government used throughout the process of putting a plan together. But equally, the authority has to make sure that the plan is based on sound evidence. So it has to be sound evidence. It has to be robust evidence that takes those policies forward as the plan is formulated. You know, we take into account the views of statutory professional bodies, as you've mentioned, and flood risk is one of those, and the EA is that statutory body. We also take into account the views and opinions, as you say, of residents, or, you know, if a local flood risk foreman put in their views, they would be taken into account during that process. But when we get to the examination process, and this is a process set by central government, this is the process that we have to follow to get those plans adopted. So they prescribe a formula which has to be, a round table discussion and examination in public. Now, those who may have objecting views to a plan, they can put in their views and can be asked to sit on that planning round table, that hearing session, and put their views and evidence across. And if they feel that they have justified and robust evidence to the contrary of what is in a plan, they can get the planning inspector who sits there independently to modify that policy or that proposal based on that sound evidence. But it has to be sound evidence that we follow. So just to know the course that it has to go through to get to that stage. So it is an independent planning inspector who makes that final decision on the plan. It's not the local authority, it's not the public, and it's not statutory bodies. It is that planning inspector. But that planning inspector has to make their decision based on absolute sound evidence, nothing else.
It's nice to hear from you that you are going to listen to other bodies, other than the authoritative bodies that we do listen to at the moment, and it's welcome news, or welcome that you've done that. All I would ask you to do then, in that respect, is to invite them, to find out who they are, and to invite them rather than they invite themselves. It would be nice for RDC to invite them to anything that would be of concern to them, and one is that.
Yeah.
If they're, I'm sure that they're all...
Everybody knows in
Yeah.
this room who I'm talking about, and they have not been asked, as other councils in the England, should I say, have put their something forward to them, and we are.
I don't know.
We
where
haven't
you're...
asked them particularly.
You
All I'm
don't-
saying particularly
Why are we not asking people?
rather than. Well, I'm not going to go into this anymore, but I'm just saying, let's open our doors. Let us bring in these other agencies, if you
Chris,
like.
I think
this is where it will
I think it's been made quite clear that we will engage as best we can with all relevant bodies to make sure we get all the best. I mean, it's all our homes, it's all our area.
Yep.
We will do the best we can on behalf of our residents to A, ensure they're engaged with the scenario, B, that their views are taken, and where possible we will incorporate their ideas, their views and everything else in future plans for the district. But there will be areas that, with the best will in the world, I mean, we're not going to be successful.
No, I understand.
I think, members, we've given item 5 a pretty lengthy airing. There is a recommendation on section 8 which says proposed that the subcommittee recommends to council that the content of the early engagement programme consultation statement as set out in appendix A be agreed. John?
I'd like to move an amendment, as I indicated when I spoke earlier. I don't know whether I'll get a second or not. I'd like to replace the word agreed with noted for the reasons that I stated, which was simply that I recognise what the residents would have said, but the response is I cannot agree with all of them. So I can't agree with them. So I'd prefer to say noted.
I agree.
No, you're not a member.
I'm not a member, but I'll agree.
Jim, yeah? Okay. And have you got that, Sonia? That will be the view of the committee. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to section or item number 6. Is that you again, Natalie?
It is, yes, yeah. So as per the previous 2 subcommittees, just set out a broad outline of what we've been working on over the last few months since the last subcommittee, and what our plan is for the next 6 to 12 months. So as you will see, we're predominantly involved in the cost point council local plan examination at the moment. That's off the back of the comments that we submitted earlier in the year at the submission stage. So we will be involved at the formal hearing session on 12th December. And we will continue to be involved in that until the inspector makes his decision. We're also being involved in the Southend Essex draft waste local plan, which is also an examination. The relevant ward councillors will have received an email from me recently to notify them that there's an additional site at Donovan's Farm that's been that the inspector has recommended is included in the plan, but that's going to be subject to further consultation next year. Don't know if any.
Right.
Any comments
Okay.
on that.
Chris, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. On both points, regarding Castle Point, what is our district council's main concerns about the Castle Point plan?
Our main concerns are that Castle Point hasn't fulfilled the legal requirement of the duty to cooperate, and off the back of that, it hasn't produced a sound plan which should be adopted by Castle Point. The main concern is that the change between the 2014 preferred options and 2016 pre-submission isn't based on sound evidence. It's what they've basically done. If you've had a chance to read our response that we submitted, they produced a certain plan in 2014 where they could meet. They said that they could comfortably meet a certain number of homes per year. Then they took the decision in March 2016, which said that they could no longer accommodate that. They could only accommodate half that amount. And that's not based on sound evidence. They, under the duty to cooperate, we don't feel that they've had relevant discussions with the neighbouring authorities on what's going to happen with any unmet need. And that's something that view is shared across generally across South Essex as well, because they've produced that plan, it has wider implications for neighbouring authorities under the duty to cooperate.
Do you want to elaborate a bit, Matt?
Just to add to that, just to show that we're not alone in our thinking, as Natalie said, all other South Essex authorities have put in similar objections to Castle Point's plan, but it's not just our housing sub-region that has, it's beyond that. There's about 12 or 15 objections from neighbouring authorities in relation to their plan under the duty to cooperate. So it is not just Rochford who is of that opinion, just so you know.
Okay. John, sorry, Chris, yeah, go.
And the second point regarding Donovan's Farm, could you elaborate on that for the benefit of people who aren't ward members? Because I think a lot of councillors will be interested in that. And just finally, could you elaborate also on what consultations will take place?
Yep.
And how it impacts on the existing council plan, which has the notorious current proposal of relocating the waste site to Mipslin's Farm.
Okay. So, as a result of the examination that went on last month into the waste local plan, the council has recommended that a specific site for basically landfill at Donovan's Farm is included within the plan in order to make it sound and to meet the county's waste needs. It wasn't included in the previous version of the plan, which is why we weren't actively involved in it. There's only general policies which are relevant to us in terms of civic amenity centres, for example. So the site at Donovan's Farm, partly in Rochford District and partly in Basildon Borough. So what the County Council and Southend Borough Council are looking to do is have a members' briefing on the 3rd of January for ward members to basically go through what the implications of allocating that site would be. That's then going to be followed by a public consultation on what they call proposed modifications to the plan. So these are modifications that the inspector has recommended, which would materially change the plan which was submitted to the government. So it will have Dolleman's Farm in there as an additional allocation for waste disposal, as well as a number of other fundamental changes to the plan, which the inspector thinks that need to be made in order to make this plan sound. So that's due to start on the 4th of January, I believe. We don't know the exact detail as yet. All we know is that we've been notified by Essex County Council that there is this additional proposal which would have implications for Basildon and Rochford.
Just to add, that would be a statutory at least 6-week consultation process.
Yeah, similar to what we've done previously after we've had a hearing session. So it's generally just a table of where any key changes are likely to be made.
Okay. All right, Chris?
Yeah, whatever happens to recycling.
Well, obviously there is a certain amount of recycling, and that's what the County Council has taken account of. But obviously there are other types of waste which can't be recycled, which need to go to a landfill. So it's part of the wider plan of the waste hierarchy.
The plan basically has a hierarchy of how you deal with waste. So, and this, I think, landfill, I'm not sure if I think it's inert waste. So, basically the developer and their agent put forward at the round table discussion. So this is, they were invited to come forward to put their point across. And they had an area of land that was, below landline levels. So they said there's a waste capacity gap existing for Essex and Southend, and they said we can help meet that need, and we feel that there's still a need for this. So they convinced, with their argument, the inspector to allow this site to go into the plan. However, as it hasn't been consulted on, it now has a statutory at least 6 weeks consultation period for that to occur. So Rochford and other authorities can put in their thoughts on whether this site should be included. So because obviously it wasn't included at the pre-submission stage, but yes, there is a waste hierarchy, but it has been identified that there is a need for this site as far as the plan is concerned.
Chris, sorry, John, you were next man.
Yeah, John, I've got quite a few observations and questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'll go
I mean,
through them.
hopefully the colleagues here can answer them, but if they can't, well then they'll just have to say
I'm
sorry.
Sure I'm sure they can. The first one is I note and applaud and agree that we need to find a better way of working with Essex County Council on highway infrastructural issues, because we know from the early consultation statement that is one of the highest issues on residents' minds, and I know it's on councillors' minds. I think there are some roads that you missed off in that particular analysis, but I think that could become evident anyway. But I think the point and the request I'm making, it's a request. Presumably we're engaging with Essex County Council on how we would like to see them engage with us and give us the sort of understanding and evidence that we can use sensibly to take a view on our spatial planning analysis, that we can actually feel that we can own, and that can be owned by residents and members. So my request is I'd like to see that come back to this subcommittee so that we can see how that is going, because I think it's so vital that if we miss the opportunity to engage with that, our residents will probably ask why we didn't think of how we should exercise ourselves in policy. So I hope that's something you can agree to.
Yeah. So at the
Violent
moment,
nodding will be good.
what we're doing at the moment, we're working with Essex County Council and their partners, Ringway Jacobs, on producing a complete baseline report of where the hotspots are across the district. So we're looking at the network as a whole and trying to, we know where they are, but it's useful to have a formal report which identifies where those hotspots are and where the key challenges are as well. So that will be ready in time to be published alongside the issues and options. And off the back of that will form our baseline. Then we'll look at the next stages. We'll look at the more detailed modelling and any mitigation measures that we can sort of look at realistically in the district.
Can that come to this subcommittee before it goes into the issues and options? I don't want to be ambushed. by residents in particular.
I suppose, you know, it's a technical evidence-based document, but yes, you know, it can be viewed by the committee.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes,
it like any piece of evidence, we're presented with the evidence, and that's their view and opinion of,
Yes.
of
I
how
think
they
if,
you know.
even if it's not in its final format,
Yes.
Yeah.
if we have a I don't know,
I'd like us at the very least in the
Yeah.
Planning Policy Subcommittee to look at evidence.
Mm.
Even if we're not going to expose evidence to full council and full council debate, though we might wish to recommend that in appropriate places,
yeah.
then at least I think this subcommittee
Yeah.
should do it.
But
Okay.
yeah, I think it's good so that everyone in the subcommittee, because it's a planning subcommittee, is aware of the evidence base that's coming forward with those elements.
Okay.
But second question is about, and I don't know what you call this, I'll probably try it in a number of ways of saying it, Shelah.
Oh,
I'm now speaking in tongues.
yeah.
Shla, I'm now drunk. The question is, I know that it's going to be coming out soon,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it's before the end of the year or just after. The project plan will tell me that. But is that going to invite comments and observations from residents, or is it simply going to be, this is what we think, stop?
Yeah, I mean, this is another evidence-based document. So, from how I have treated them in the past and how authorities that I've worked at have treated them in the past, this is another sort of piece of evidence base that helps form what goes into an issues and options stage of the local plan. So, it is not a consultation document for residents as such, in the same way that a strategic flood risk assessment is, or a retail study is. So it's a piece of evidence that informs the local plan, and residents will then comment on the local plan as such.
Let me challenge that a little bit, if I
Okay.
may, from a perspective that you helped me get, which is always useful. We spoke about, we know that an analysis, I think I know, that analysis of each site in the call for sites is the basis of sustainability, looking at environmental, social and economic factors, all the ones that we can comment on as councillors without impinging on planning probity. So if I read your deposition in the Shelah, whatever you called it, and I don't think it's right, how do I, or indeed anyone else, feed back to the council and challenge it?
Well, I guess it's if that site comes forward as part of the issues and options local plan. So if that site is included as a site for employment, residential, mixed use, industrial, whatever it is, if you don't feel that it is deliverable, justified, you know, you can comment on that plan at that stage and say, you know, I don't think that site's going to come forward, I don't think that's the right use for that site, with evidence, then absolutely fine, you know.
Help me when they're going to be incorporated into what and when?
So, if a site comes forward from the call for sites and is put into the issues and options stage of the local plan, say for instance, those sites, once they're in there or whatever stage they come into the local plan, they will then be open for consultation, and then it's open for others to challenge whether a site should be part of the plan or not. But as I say, it can't just be, I don't like that site, it can't be in here. It has to be, you know, justified, and that's, you know, that's for us. We have to justify through evidence what we do, and those who are challenging us, because when it gets to the examination process, as I say, with the planning inspector, that's what he's going to be looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
John,
before you go on. Go on.
Yeah, I'd also
Go
just
on.
like to point out that it's Sheila, I think we're going to go with.
Sheila. Ah, Sheila.
So it's important to remember that it is an evidence-based document. It doesn't allocate land, and there is clear guidance in the planning practice guidance on how we treat those sites. So we make sure that we treat them equally. So there's no prejudice with regard to those sites. So that's the approach that we're taking with that. So it is a
They're not
technical
planning
evidence.
policy. Yeah,
No.
they're not allocated sites.
No.
They're not planning
Until
policy.
until they come into the policy.
I tell you why I raised it,
Process.
because we're talking about engagement, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about what really interests residents. I tell you what really interests residents is where potentially further developments of any sort will take place.
I mean, that's
which
the
is why I raised it,
fundamental
because
thing, yeah.
you know there's a certain amount of frustration going to creep in if we don't
No.
explain to them when they can say what they think,
Yeah.
whether it's supported, evidenced, or what.
No, I certainly
Yeah.
understand where you're coming from, and when we do publish the issues and options, it will obviously look at how we deliver any housing, and so it will look at what our strategy is going to be. So people may at that point wish to comment on specific sites. We can't stop people commenting on specific sites, but they can't directly challenge the evidence, if you like.
Unless
They
they've got
can't
very,
have input into that evidence directly, but they can
Okay,
challenge it
I've got
through
it.
the
Through the
policy
plan.
process.
I've got it. Nothing's,
Plan,
nothing's
yeah.
really changed except, you know, this is now a wider understanding of that issue.
Yeah.
Okay, can I keep going? I've got relevant things, honestly. An action group in Billericay commented to me that the Brexit schma, or the implications of Brexit on the schma, it's unlikely to be published by the end of the year, as our project plan shows. They weren't looking at our project plan, I'm looking at our project plan, and they're talking about maybe June.
No, that's not the latest
No.
information that we've been given.
All right, fine.
I
Good
mean,
for
we're,
ours, yeah.
just to give you a bit of background, we're also producing, as you all have read in there, South Essex wide, called an EDNA. So it's an
Sheila and Edna.
Sheila and Edna.
You're very Australian, aren't you?
So that's the economic development needs assessment, and they're looking to, the consultants are looking to align the underlying sort of demographic and economic work. So there's been a bit of a hold up with the SHMAR work, but the latest information we had is that they should be published by the end of the
They've
year.
decided on what economic forecasts that we should go ahead as
Yeah.
a sub-region. So now that work can go ahead.
Yeah, so we're still expecting it by the
Okay.
end of the year.
It's good clarification, thanks for that. Now I come to Castle Point. I take it we're going to be represented on the 12th of December.
We are, yeah.
Will the portfolio holder be going?
I'm happy to attend.
Just asking a question,
necessary,
really.
if necessary.
It is an open session, so as per the hearing sessions we've had before, you have certain people around the table who have been specifically invited, but then people, members of the public, whoever, can observe, but they can't be involved.
So it is a
Yeah.
public,
It's a public forum,
Yeah.
Yes.
but a private
But,
meeting.
but
in
the inspector invites who they wish to give evidence.
Yes, fine.
So you and Natalie
Yeah.
will.
Good. So I think it's important you're there, because
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's going to be some interesting challenges.
It will be an interesting.
Because
day.
I can't see Castle Point as rolling over somehow. Because, you know, I find myself in a very difficult position, because you've got residents in Castle Point who are contacting me as a representative of a residents group, if you like, saying you really do support, you know, our stance and our strategy on the numbers of houses and saving green belt, don't you? And I'm kind of thinking, well, no, because this unmet need, and you're very close to us.
But I don't think, John, you're going to find Rochford District or any of the other neighbouring districts rolling over either.
No, okay. I just put that unmet need worry me. Okay. Then the other thing that starts to come up is we in our response we state that Castle Point hasn't engaged with us. Okay. So we have a duty to cooperate as well. And although that interface may not have worked, even though we may have tried, can you tell me what we've done with regard to the other councils that we need to interface with? And at what point will we reach a memorandum of understanding?
And beyond that, do you want to start and then I'll?
Yeah, so
Well,
we...
do the other
Sorry.
one, so I can see
So-
you itching.
Yes. So as officers, we have regular monthly meetings to discuss strategic issues. Housing, of course, is one of those. But our main issue is that there hasn't been a specific discussion on Castle Point, because they're at that stage, on what happens now, effectively. They took a decision, they've gone down a specific route, but they haven't considered what the wider implications are of that for neighbouring authorities. So although we do meet on a regular basis, there hasn't been that detailed level of engagement between the authorities to our satisfaction, that we can say, okay, we clearly understand where you're coming from, and this is what, as a sub-region, we're going to do about that issue. That hasn't taken place. We've also got a South Essex members group, which meet on an ad hoc basis at the moment, and there's also a head of service group that meets on a regular monthly basis as well. So there is that level of engagement that has been ongoing at South Essex level, but the specific Castle Point issue hasn't been addressed as yet.
You haven't completed the whole question, unless Matthew can do that.
qualify
I asked about the
yeah.
memorandum of understanding.
Yes.
As I understand it, it's part of the duty to cooperate statute.
Yeah,
And we have to exchange those formally with other councils.
It's something
All right.
that the councils have developed together as part of the Duty to Cooperate Officer Group, through the Heads of Service Group, and then to the Members Group. That's still a work in progress at the moment, this Memorandum of Understanding. But in the background, as Natalie said, the authorities have cooperated on strategic issues. However, housing has been one that has been more difficult to reach any conclusions on yet. And the 12th of December is going to be sort of quite influential in moving that forward, because we are going to have a planning inspector who will make a decision at the end of those hearings, and he may suggest how the authorities move forward as far as talking about housing delivery in South Essex. I mean, interestingly, this, Castle Point are in the position they are because they progressed quickly with a plan, but as Natalie said, they may have not considered that housing to the full degree, even if they had considered other strategic issues along the way. Potentially Basildon could be in a similar situation as well. So, this isn't just a decision that's going to affect Castle Point, it's going to affect Basildon's position as far as their plan's concerned, and then how we all come together from that moment to discuss the pertinent issue of housing, because that's the one sticking point as far as the duty matters are concerned. And I think that's why the inspector has decided to hold just a one-day hearing, because normally this is normally the first day of a local plan hearing. You do the duty, you do the legal compliance and soundness, then you move on to all the individual issues. But they've just arranged one day, one session, because I think it's going to sort of come to the fore about how the authorities move forward with housing in the future. So after the 12th, we should know a lot more.
Presumably you'll be doing a briefing paper for members?
Yeah, we can post.
I think it's important.
Yeah, we can do a briefing paper post hearing,
Yeah.
but only obviously once we have the decision of the inspector.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. Right, promise you, Chairman, my very last point. I have a struggle with the recommendation again, and I'm going to explain to you why. The particular issue I have is the addition of the words subject to resource constraints. Because I can't put my name to that, because I don't know what the resource constraints are. They've not been evaluated, and I've not been given the opportunity to consider how they could be managed or mitigated. So therefore, if that goes forward to full council, then I would not be able to answer the question as to, well, what are they? Have you evaluated them? How are you going to manage them? So if I can't do that, I can't agree to the recommendation, and I won't. But if you're prepared to take those words out, which I don't think add anything to it anyway, because everything is subject to resource constraints, then I can support it. But it's up to the subcommittee to consider the matter.
I was disappointed when I read that, I must admit, because as you say, everything's subject to resource constraints.
Well, before we get to that, I think, James, you were on the list to...
Oh yeah, Chairman. Sorry, Sonia, I need to declare an interest in the Dollymans item as a tenant of SJR Farming. I just wanted a quick question to Natalie. Will that invitation be extended to non-ward members about the land of the site? Because I think that it actually does have an impact on other areas, potentially.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it was initially arranged, wasn't it, for Basildon councillors asked for
Yeah.
the invitation to be sent out, wasn't it? And then they invited and suggested that Rochford councillors in that ward also attend. Can we go back to Essex waste planning team just to find out what level of resource that they have available, and then come back to you on that one today?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Just to see, just to finalise what format they've got it in, what size of facility, and then we can see what's available. But we could come back to you later today on that, if that's okay.
Okay.
I was going to ask the same
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
Because I think it's wider than just the
Yeah.
councillors.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Any, Chris? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to try and, I'm not putting a spanner in the works or anything like it, but the depression in Dollyman's Farm was what is looked at in the way of the flood alleviation. That, as you know, that could be a way of pushing the water over to Dollyman's Farm, as that's quite a big green belt and it's ploughed and what have you. With the depressions that there are over there, they'd hold an awful lot of water, from what I understand, and there is an overall view, if you like, in the planning of that, utilising that ground. So, and I'm really worried about the waste that will be put there and where it will drain off to, as it will drain off to into the brook, which is a big concern at Royth. I've got to bring that into your attention. So
Well, I'm sure county will be.
I'm
aware of
positive that
Yeah.
they'll already know about
I
this.
mean
and
that's
what have you,
something
but
that could be raised as part of the consultation.
Yeah.
Depending on what kind of waste, it might be inert waste, it might just be soil or whatever, going into that area. But dependent on that, we can raise those points anyway
But
to ensure
nevertheless, it will
that
drain
water
off.
courses, yes,
yeah, it will drain off, and we're
yeah.
hoping, and there is also thought of some of the football activities, whether it be football or what it be, is going to be transferred over onto Dollyman's Farm, which is another concern as a health hazard. If it's going to be, I didn't realise it was going to be obviously a waste field to refill. I thought it was going to be just a transfer station.
It is still only a proposal at this
Yeah, I
point,
know it's only a
so-
proposal, but we've got to look at these
Yeah,
other
but
Yeah,
things.
I'm
like
sure.
health-
I'm sure
health and
that.
safety
I mean, you've
and
made the point on
Yeah,
that,
and they're
naturally. I'm sure the
elements
other
that can
bodies
be-
will be
Yeah.
fully involved.
There are elements that can be raised
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Essex and Southend.
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Unless there's any other issues or comments, members, you wish to make, it seems fairly obvious. And advice from Sonia, this is only down to this committee as the wording here, so that current work streams continue, and we take out subject to resource constraints. Okay.
Great.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously, item 6.1 does point that out quite succinctly anyway.
Yeah. So, okay. Unless there's anything else, members, I'll close the meeting at 11:36. Thank you very much.
Well done.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, but you're pretty much